For many, the United States has the lion's share of scary stories and tales, especially when it comes to folk legends, tales circulating among people. However, many countries around the world have their own tales when it comes to scary stories that make one's hair stand up. Below are some of those popular myths that will make your heart beat fast and your body tremble. Noisy upstairs apartment. Singapore is an island of terrifying legends. One of the popular stories also circulating in Singapore is that many families complain about the noise of children in the apartment located directly above theirs, especially in high-rise residential buildings. They hear them playing ball until late hours of the night, and when the residents lose in the end, they get nervous and get angry, so they go up to the apartment where the noise is coming from, but they complain about the annoying noise. But to their great surprise, they discover that the apartment is empty. When they talk to the owner of the building, they realize that the apartment has been empty for months and that the previous family that lived in it did not have children at all. Another popular tale in Singapore is about the Bishan Rapid Transit Station, which opened in November 1987, and since then many passengers have reported seeing headless ghosts wandering among the neighborhoods adjacent to the station. Do not be surprised, dear reader, as the matter did not come out of nowhere. In the opinion of some, the matter has something to do with the construction of the station over the site of the ancient Bek San Thing cemetery. The sanctity of the dead has been violated. Employees on the night shift confirm these tales, with some reporting seeing coffin bearers roaming the tunnels linking Bishan to the adjacent Novena subway station, which also happened to be built over a former cemetery. A dead body in the subway. Let us bid farewell to Singapore and fly to London, that ancient city famous for its stories of ghosts and supernatural beings, and the owner of the oldest subway in the world. In 2007, popular tales spread online about a fine art student who took the subway home in central London late one evening. She and another man in his mid-30s were the only passengers on the subway car until 3 other people got on. The next stop. The 3 were in a strange condition, 2 men dragging a woman, so the student assumed that the woman was drunk. The student did not feel comfortable with their presence. They were like addicts, and she started avoiding looking at them. Then suddenly the 30-year-old passenger got up and sat next to her, then whispered to her, saying that he would get off at the next stop and that he was advising her to get off as well. The girl felt afraid of the man, but her fear of the 2 men and the woman was greater. She did not want to stay with them alone in the carriage, so she decided to get out. The girl and the man got off at the next station, and with some relief they watched the train leave. Then the man turned to the girl and told her that when the 2 men got into the car and while they were dragging the woman with them, he saw scissors stuck in the back of her skull. She was dead, the final resting place of horror. Australia has its fair share of unique animals and terrifying spiders. But what you don't know is that it also has a good share of tales of scary ghosts and goblins. In Brisbane, the 3rd largest city in Australia, there is an old scary tale swirling around one of the streets that runs inside the ancient Toowong Cemetery. The story goes that on the side of that road there is a hill on top of which lies a double grave belonging to 2 sisters who died in a car accident a long time ago. And if for any reason your car stops at the bottom of the hill, the 2 sisters will appear and slowly pull it up to the top where a terrifying fate awaits you. In another cemetery called Judna, a man said that he wanted to leave after visiting one of the graves, but he was unable to move his car even though it was running. He struggled with it all night, and when the sun rose over the cemetery, the car finally moved. When he arrived home, he found deep scratches on either side of his car, as if mysterious hands were holding it. For your information, Judna Cemetery is filled with the graves of people who lived in the 19th century. These remains include former patients of the old Brisbane Mental Hospital. One of the oldest stories that many believe to this day about the Brisbane Cemetery is that Jack the Big-Bellied, the famous London serial killer during the 19th century, is buried in this cemetery and his grave is famous there. In fact, the grave belongs to a man named Walter Thomas Porriott, but the name is on a gravestone. The grave does not bear his name, but rather his wife's name, accompanied by the phrase, "His husband was buried next to her." This burial traveled to London before the 5 famous crimes occurred, and the crime stopped as soon as he left London and returned to Australia. What makes him a suspect is that he was known for his intense hatred of prostitutes. He wrote about this explicitly, and all of Jack the Ripper's crimes occurred against prostitutes. The other matter is that he worked in medicine, and it is known that one of the most prominent features of Jack the Ripper's crimes is that the bodies of the victims were mutilated and dismembered in a very precise way that suggests that the perpetrator had precise knowledge of the anatomy of the human body. In other words, he is a surgeon. La Musara is haunted. The once beautiful city of La Mosera in Villaplana, Spain, now echoes with haunting silence as its ruins stand guard over the plains of Tarracuna. Officially, the city was abandoned after a severe insect infestation wiped out the vineyard on which residents depended for their livelihood. Unofficially, the town has been cursed, causing its residents to flee its borders. Rumor has it that thick fog often blankets the town, disorienting visitors. Those who have attempted to explore the ruins of La Musara have also reported hearing the sounds of horses' hooves whispering from afar. Some believe that the city has a portal to another world known as La Villa del Ses. Jumping over a certain stone outside a certain house will lead you to cross this world, where you will be greeted by terrifying creatures from the underworld. In addition to the speculation and legends, there is the alleged disappearance of Enrique Martinez Ortiz, who set out on October 16, 1991, with a group of friends to collect mushrooms in La Musara. During the trip, Enrique lagged behind his friends, and when they turned to look for him, he was gone and no one saw him again. The place where the devil appeared. In Ireland there are a host of folk tales when it comes to scary ghosts and mysterious shadows. In 1766, the family of Lord Charles of Tottenham moved to Loftus Palace in County Wexford, which is a very old mansion. When the Lord's wife died unexpectedly, he quickly married another woman, hoping that his new wife would help raise his 2 young daughters. One stormy night in 1775, the Lord's sons and one of his daughters were on a trip to London, and only the Lord, his wife, and his daughter, Anne, were in the palace. That night, a ship crashed on the shore near the palace, and suddenly a young man appeared on the doorstep of the Lord's house, saying that he was the only survivor of the ship's crew. The family welcomed the young man, and he stayed with them for several weeks. As time passed, Anne found herself attracted to the man. They talked for hours inside the room and played cards until late. One night, the Lord, his wife, Anne, and the young man were playing cards in the palace foyer. Anne accidentally dropped her card and bent down under the table to fetch it. Here she saw a scene that frightened her. She noticed that the young man did not have feet, but hooves, and she realized that the man she was drawn to was, in fact, the hoofed devil. And got up and shouted angrily at the young man, "You have feet shaped like hooves." Suddenly the young man's face changed and his face became terrifying, then he turned into a ball of fire and flew across the ceiling before disappearing, leaving a large gap. And never recovered from the shock and fell into a state of madness. Of course, for the daughter of a high-class family to become mad was a shameful thing at that time, and so that no one would know what happened, her family locked her in one of the rooms of the palace, where the girl sat for weeks, refusing food and contenting herself with sitting all day and night, staring. She sadly looked to the window of the room overlooking the beach, perhaps waiting for her hoofed lover to return. It was not long before she died in that room while sitting. It is said that when her family wanted to bury her, they tried to spread her body out, but her muscles were stiff, so they had to bury her while she was sitting. Today, Loftus Palace is considered one of the most haunted houses in Ireland. Residents of the palace for 2 centuries spoke of the presence of the ghost of a girl walking around the palace at night. When the palace was opened as a museum in 2012, many visitors also spoke of strange things and sounds in the palace. You can also see the hole in the ceiling where the demon escaped after being discovered. Malicious light. The folklore of Uruguay, Argentina, and Chile includes the tale of a malevolent light. In northern Argentina, a light appears at night in the city of Mendoza. It hovers a few meters above the ground at the foot of the mountain, and many motorists, especially truck drivers, say they saw it while driving on the road. The indigenous people of the area believe that the light is evil, and some visitors have claimed that it is a fireball that haunts those traveling alone. There is nothing to fear when the light is white, but if it appears green or red, travelers should run for their lives as they will be afflicted with bad luck for life. The indigenous people believe that the light could be the spirit of someone who has not been properly buried and has come to ask for help. Revenge. It seems that a few of those who tried to find the source of the light found human remains. Multicultural monster. Even today there are still parents around the world who frighten their children with stories of the bogeyman. The monster takes different forms and names depending on the country, region, or culture. However, the basic message remains the same: listen to the words or you will be eaten/kidnapped/tortured/killed. The hand of the boogeyman. In Latin America, the monster is known as the coca. It can take any form, including human form, and can hide anywhere without being discovered. The myth of the coca was first mentioned in texts written by Diodorus of Sicily, Theodore Sicilian, who claimed that Iberian soldiers would cut off the heads of their enemies and pierce the heads with spears as an offering to coca. Stephen King's version of the legend says that the coca is a body of worms that infiltrates a person's DNA before transforming into something similar to itself. In Portugal and Spain, the monster's head is believed to be a pumpkin and is lit from within by a candle. Come tomorrow. Legend says that during the 1990s, residents of small towns and villages in the state of Karnataka in the southwestern region of India began writing the phrase, Nil Ba, on their walls. This came after a rumor spread about the presence of a witch knocking on the doors of homes and speaking to their residents in the voice of one of their relatives. If a family member opens the door, death will be the fate of the family. Families who heard this horrific tale sought to protect themselves by writing Nil Ba, meaning, come tomorrow, on the outside walls of their homes. When the witch approached their homes, she would read the words and return the next day, and this continued in an endless, vicious cycle, with the witch unable to harm anyone again. Today, some places still celebrate April 1st as Nili Ba Day. In 2018, the Bollywood film Stree was released, whose director said he drew some inspiration from the real Nil Ba legend. Jealousy out of control. Those who have the opportunity to visit Amsterdam often head to Said El Bar Street. It is now part of Chinatown, but in fact it was one of the oldest neighborhoods of the city. Unfortunately, it is also the place where a cold-blooded murder took place, and the screams of the unfortunate victim can still be heard throughout the night. In the early 19th century, sisters Dina and Helen fell in love with the same man. Wouter was a sailor who loved Dina and sent her several letters while he was at sea. Helena intercepted the letters and burned them. When Dina realized what Helena had done, she confronted her sister, which led to a quarrel. So the angry Helena pushed her sister down the stairs in their house on Sad Al Bar Street. Then she rushed after her to the basement, and saw that she was still alive, so she beat her to death and left her body there. Dina's parents assumed that their daughter's death was an accident, and in the end Helena got her wish when she married a broken-hearted Wouter. But her conscience got the better of her on her deathbed, and she confessed to killing Dina. Wouter was shocked and disgusted. He turned his back on his wife and left her to die alone. Helena still wanders on Sad Al Bar Street, unable to rest, causing shivers to spread to the bodies of the living. On stormy nights, Dina's soul howls and wails, her ghostly voice carried by the wind, making those who hear it close the doors and wait for safety in the morning. Jungle screams. The Deering Forest has been nicknamed the Screaming Forest and is famous for being one of the most haunted sites in Britain. Those who have explored the forest said they heard screams coming from its depths and whispers floating behind them on foggy days. Some believe the screams come from the disturbed souls of those who died during the 1948 massacre, in which 20 bodies were found among the trees on November 1st. Residents who heard about the tragedy recalled seeing strange lights swirling within the woods the night before, which was Halloween night. Unfortunately, Autopsies performed on the bodies were unable to determine the cause of death. Some believe that an 18th-century bandit and murderer did not. He still wanders the Deering forests looking for revenge on the villagers who caught and killed him. He often screams in frustration and anger at his inability to avenge his death. The Deering Wood was home for another mystery when on October 1998, on the same night of 50 years before, 4 college students who were visiting the forest went missing after people from Pluckley reported seeing figures of light similar to spider webs in the sky. Their bodies were never found, and after 3 weeks, the police investigation stopped.